We would like to commence this keynote presentation by reading a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge the history of the land Lewis and Clark College occupies. Prior to the colonizers arriving in this area, the indigenous land of what would later be called Multnomah County was home to many tribal people. We honor the indigenous people on whose traditional and ancestral homelands we stand. The Multnomah, Cathlamet, Clackamas, Tumwater, and Watlala bands of the Chinook, the Tualatin Kalapuya, and many other indigenous nations of the Columbia River. It is important to acknowledge the ancestors of this place and recognize that we are here because of them. We honor their legacy, their lives, and their descendants.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our second keynote of the 39th Annual Gender Studies Symposium. Woo! Yeah. So thank you all for being here, seriously. We are committed to accessibility here at the Gender Studies Symposium. However, today has been a very crazy day, and we were this close to actually canceling this event, but we tried to persevere and continue going. So here we are, but unfortunately we don't have our sign language interpreters here for this event, so we apologize for that. There will also be a Q&A after the presentation, and you could wait for Sharon and I to bring the mics up to you, and please use the mics. Even if you think your voice is loud enough to be heard, it's not, and we need it for our recording.
Tonight's keynote presentation is unusual as our campus is currently in the process of closing due to the proliferation of the COVID-19 virus. We are recording tonight's presentation to share with our community because so many members are currently practicing social distancing. Normally we would host, we are hosting a Q&A.
We are honored to introduce our second keynote speaker, Feminista Jones, Philadelphia-based writer, public speaker, award-winning blogger, and retired social worker. Feminista Jones's work centers on Black American culture, feminism, critical race theory, and intersectionality. She's the author of the critically acclaimed book, Reclaiming Our Space: How Black Feminists Are Changing the World from the Streets to the Tweets, which was published in 2019. In 2015, Feminista Jones co-founded and served as general director of Women's Freedom Conference, the first all-digital conference completely organized by and featuring women of color. In 2019, Feminista Jones was listed on the Bitch 50, which honors the most influential feminists annually. In Reclaiming Our Space: How Black Feminists Are Changing the World from the Streets to the Tweets, Feminista Jones turns her attention to the world of social media and what possibilities this platform could afford marginalized communities and identities. Feminista Jones posits that the internet and social media provide a new landscape for community formation and activist politics. Not only does social media provide a space for narratives of disenfranchisement and oppression, it serves as an accessible way for people to connect with others that are outside of their immediate reach. Digital communities offer opportunities of communicating outside of traditional narratives and dominance.
Every year, the Gender Studies Symposium strives to invite speakers from a variety of backgrounds to speak about gender and sexuality and how these topics intersect with systems of oppression. In looking for keynote speakers whose work contemplates our area of interest in speculation, invention, and possibility, we thought of Feminista Jones's activism, which utilizes and reinforces online spaces, most notably Twitter. Social media has been a buzzword for the past 2 decades, and many of us are familiar with debates about the benefits and evils of online social platforms. Feminista Jones gives us a reason to make full use of the possibilities of social media. Her work is not only unequivocally intersectional, but it values online platforms as crucial sites for interaction, activism, and feminism. We are so excited to have her here today with us, so please join me in welcoming Feminista Jones to the podium. Thank you.
That was so nice. Usually they read the stuff I have on my website, which is kind of corny, but like you all put some thought into that. Thank you so much. Y'all, we're still alive. We are here. And I'm not making light of anybody whose lives have been lost. I'm very serious. Like, we are here. And I want to honor that all of you came out today to listen to what I have to say. There's a lot going on right now, y'all. And it's okay to hold space for that and to acknowledge that there's a lot of fear And there's a lot of grief, there's a lot of loss, there's a lot going on. And then it's also wonderful to honor those who are pushing through. And so I just want to acknowledge you all as some of those who are pushing through. So thank you for coming out with, joining me this evening. I hope you learned a couple of things. Maybe not, I don't know, we'll see. I'm kind of an around the way girl. I don't know, like I like to be like real cool, but then I feel like I gotta be all professional or whatever, so I wrote a speech, but then the virus, right? So I'm gonna try to do this. So first, happy Women's History Month, right? I feel like as a Black woman, it's all like Black history, Black history, Black history 365, and then great, and then Women's History come, and then all the people that was real happy about Black history are like on March Madness. And I really be on like, ain't I a woman? You know what I mean? Like, am I not a woman too? Like, do not Black women have the right to celebrate Women's History Month? But I think that that's part of the problem, is that some of our own people don't even see us as authentically women. I was excited to be here. I like coming to gender studies symposiums, and I'm gonna pour this water because my throat is dry. I'm thankful to Lewis and Clark for having me. I'm thankful to everybody that put this program together. And again, you know, it is not your fault that this happened, but I'm thankful to be here. I remember when I was asked to come and speak, and it's this idea of imagining the possibilities. And I think that when you are talking about the work that women can do, the possibilities are endless. So I had to kind of focus in a little bit, and I said that I want to think about what we could learn from queer women of color and the work that they have done and how they can guide us in what we're supposed to be doing. I believe that a true revolution happens when those who exist at the intersections of race, gender, and sexual oppressions are the architects and the leaders of the revolution. My mom raised me as a queer Black power feminist herself, so I learned at an early age the importance of fighting for what is right. And I recognized that I was fortunate enough to have such a parent who educated me and exposed me to the realities of a multi-layered oppression. She encouraged me to never stop fighting, but she was honest about what I was up against. She also made sure that I was fighting not only for myself, but for those who would come after me. I'd like to think that I'm a respected voice of modern feminism. I mean, bitch said so. They're cool. Shout out to bitch, thank you. I do what I can to engage in current discourse about various things. However, it's really important for me to make sure that people who are maybe new to feminism or to the social justice realm are informed and equipped with the knowledge and context they need to keep things moving forward. It's important that people study their history and soak up what they can. There are some powerful takeaways from the work of those who came before us. We can learn from both their achievements and their shortfalls. And while we spend a lot of time on social media, the things that you see, especially in the tweets, are not the whole story. You have to study gender theory. You have to study feminist theory. You have to understand queer theory. You have to understand race theory. If we're gonna talk about gender and race and sexual identity and social justice, we need to talk about how we've come to understand these things and how as they are, and the work that has been done to give us the language and the tools that we now have to use to work to change society. We weren't all born speaking multisyllabic words. I didn't know what heteropatriarchal normativity or whatever was 15 years ago. I do now, thanks to Twitter. My studies throughout my life led me to the sex-positive arm of feminism. And I remember finding myself being more interested in how sex and sexuality played into women's liberation, how it played into our empowerment and our freedom. I found it to be very white. And I recognized then that when it comes to feminism, women's issues, sex and sexuality, women of color, particularly Black women, are sorely underrepresented in the work and in the discourse. Queer women of color are even worse off with regard to representation, despite our many contributions to liberation work. I found this to be a travesty, and something that I hope that we can continue to work on improving going forward. But one of the greatest lessons I've learned from studying the lives and the work of queer women of color is that resilience is the key to survival. For me, resilience comes from learning to love without fear. It is through learning how to appreciate every moment of my life that I was fully able to embrace my purpose here on earth. Learning to love myself as a woman, as a Black woman, and definitely as a queer Black woman, in a world constantly telling me I'll never be good enough, smart enough, or beautiful enough to be loved, has been a true struggle. And to be honest, it's something that I still have to work on. I have learned, however, to speak truth to power. And in my case, I write truth to power. My mind goes to women like Alice Walker or Audre Lorde, two queer Black women whose writing highlighted the experiences of Black American women. In Lorde's work, she challenged the status quo of white male hetero privilege and assisted in the construction of a Black feminist politic that guides my life and work today. She focused on reimagining Blackness and womanhood and queerness as radical identities no longer defined by the paleness of a white male supremacy. And Walker's narrative brought Black women's stories to life. And her work teaches us that if there's a story that's not been told, you need to write it and share it with the world, even when you're afraid. Because there's a child somewhere waiting to grow old enough to hear that story and forever be changed by it. While both of these women could have focused solely on their artistic endeavors, they chose to engage in social activism, fully understanding the power of the written word. What they put down on paper inspires thousands, if not millions, of people around the world, decades after they first shared them. What we learned from them is the power of the pen and the importance of being honest and dutiful in our writing. And then I think of Lorraine Hansberry, best known for A Raisin in the Sun, who was also an activist and Black liberationist. She worked with Paul Robeson on the journal Freedom. It was a Black radical journal. She also contributed to a magazine published by the Daughters of Bilitis, a lesbian social group. In her letters to the latter, which was a lesbian-leaning publication, she would write about her attempts to reconcile respectability politics with being Black and queer. She also emphasized and reiterated the need for women, whether queer or not, to create separate space and cultivate knowledge and build intellectual community. Away from the gaze and the control of men was super important. She wasn't necessarily out. All evidence showed that she remained closeted for the most part, and her ex-husband locked away her so-called lesbian letters in an act of denial and erasure. It didn't make her any less queer. And what we learned from Hansberry is that there's a time and a place for everything. And self-preservation is incredibly important in the face of violence. While some of us feel bold and are able to lead the charge in these fights, not everyone feels safe enough or is comfortable enough to be out and proud and bold. Even though she wrote at a time when she could have and in some ways did find solace in community, she had a keen discernment and she valued the women with whom she kept intellectual company. But maybe we can take it a step further and create our own reality within our own space, taking our cues from Gloria Anzaldúa. She's a queer Chicana feminist. She co-edited the book called This Bridge Called My Back, Writings by Radical Women of Color. You should all read that. For those of us who feel stuck between two worlds, or maybe more than that, who feel like our hands and our feet are planted in different spaces and we are constantly negotiating and code switching, her work may offer some comfort and some connection. She refused to choose. She was no more a woman than she was Chicana, than she was a US citizen, than she was queer. And I, for one, am adamant about rejecting any calls to prioritize any parts of my identity. She also teaches us that not everything we share is for everyone to understand, And we should not have to compromise on communicating in our native language or in dialects most comfortable to us, just so others can feel more comfortable consuming our stories and valuing our lives. Si yo quiero hablar en español, if I ain't really feeling this 25-20 shit, know what I mean? I should not have to alter who I am or how I present to be accepted as credible and a valuable contributor to liberation discourse and activism. And sure, writing is cool and all, but that's not everyone's jam. Maybe like Sylvia and Marcia, you just need to throw bricks at a motherfucker, because sometimes people won't listen to you and you have to make them listen. And when they seek to violently oppress you, you have to fight back with everything in you just so you can live to dance and strut another day. Continuing to fight requires a deep love, but I'm gonna be honest. Sometimes loving my people isn't always easy. I've encountered gender erasure, queerphobia, and misogyny in Black spaces, and I've also encountered racism, classism, and queerphobia in non-Black spaces. I've learned to reclaim my space, by the book, and take more space than was allotted to me. I think about someone like Heather Purser, the indigenous activist who fought to have her tribal council recognize same-sex marriages even before the United States did. When you're queer, when you're a woman, the challenges you face even within your own communities who are also oppressed seems ridiculous. Why can't they understand your plight? Why do they push race and ethnicity first? If you're so inclined, you may find that your passion is actually working from the inside and changing the hearts and the minds of the people closest to you. But you know what's really hard? Loving this idea of freedom, because how do we love something that none of us has ever truly experienced? How can I experience a love for something that for someone like me seems so inconceivable? When have any of us truly been free? I've been thinking about this for some time, and I think a lot about our personal freedoms. We may feel that we have individual freedoms, but collectively, are we? And if any among us are not, then are any of us? So maybe the key to liberation is holding fast to what you believe and refusing to move, like LaDonna Brave Bull Allard. She's the founder of the Sacred Stone Camp and on her land, which was the first resistance camp against the Dakota Access Pipeline movement. She started the movement. Everybody saw the hashtag, no DAPL. I think about people like Josephine Baker, who left. Sometimes what we learn from queer women of color is that it's time to walk away for your own self-preservation. I think about all the ways in which oppression shows up in our daily lives, and a lot of times it looks like benevolence. Benevolence can be oppressive when individual agency is disregarded. We have to learn to give people the chance to determine the things like success and beauty and intelligence and worth for themselves without measuring themselves against a very white, very male, very thin, very able-bodied, very young, very inaccessible status quo. But because of the power of social media, folks like me, queer women of color like me, have been able to find strength, and we found it by forming these digital communities. We now live in a time where we don't have to wait for other people to give a stamp of approval to get our words out there. We don't have to wait to be published or to have our words approved by a white man. We have access to communities all over the world with just a few clicks, and that is powerful. We're able to use photos and make our own videos and tell our stories and firsthand accounts of what's really going on. And in the last decade, we've learned that we have an undeniable power right in our hands. We record the beauty of our lives, we record the tragedy of our lives. We record the truth of our lives so nobody can deny our experiences. We can commit to what we're passionate about and be creative in how we engage people and support various causes. All of this with just a few clicks. So what are we supposed to do with this power that we have? I don't necessarily have the answers, even though I wrote a whole book about it, but I can tell you that we have each other, and we're gonna need each other now more than ever. Silence is no longer acceptable because your silence will be read as complicity. We have a humane obligation to speak up in the face of our fears and in the midst of our greatest doubt, when we can barely find the strength to get out of bed in the morning. We have to keep in the backs of our mind this idea that we each have a role to play in the fight against these oppressions. I am a fat, black, queer woman who openly identifies as a feminist. People want me dead. Is my freedom and the quest for it the same experience that you have? Or are we fighting for different things? I think we all collectively have a lot of self-assessment to do, and I think we have a great deal of unity work that we need to do. We have a lot to learn about ourselves, particularly those of you that are in college. This is when you're supposed to be figuring things out. But we also have to learn more about the people around us and build community. Now, this is the part where I say you're not supposed to just sit next to each other and not know the person next to you, but we're in the middle of a pandemic, so I'm okay with you all not sitting that close to each other. That's the inspirational part. You're supposed to turn to the person next to you and say, hey, but you don't have to do that right now. No, you can exchange emails later, okay? So back to the point. So we have a lot of biases to overcome, and we have a lot of hatred and bigotry to eradicate. And we have to confront the parts that make us uncomfortable. And I'm telling y'all, we have to do this sooner than later, because if we don't come together and work united, we are not going to make it. And most of all, we have to continue to support the work and amplify the voices of the queer women of color, who for all intents and purposes appear to have long had the keys to liberations tucked into their bras. So I will leave you with some of the words by these women and hope that they inspire you to keep going, and also to never give up on yourselves and each other. And I think the key there is to not give up on each other. For in the end, freedom is a personal and lonely battle, and one faces down fears of today so that those of tomorrow might be engaged, and that is by Alice Walker. If I didn't define myself for myself, I would be crunched into other people's fantasies for me and eaten alive. That's Audre Lorde. I feel that women, without wishing to foster any strict separatist notions, homo or hetero, indeed have a need for their own publications and organizations. Our problems, our experiences as women are profoundly unique and compared to the other half of the human race. Women, like other oppressed groups of one kind or another, have particularly had to pay the price for the intellectual impoverishment that the second-class status imposed on us for centuries created and sustained. That was Lorraine Hansberry. I'm grateful for all of the opportunities that I have to come out and to speak with folks like you. I enjoy inspiring all of you, if I do. And I appreciate you all being here. Thank you. That's it. And I know there's like a Q&A and all that great stuff. Yes, there's questions. Yes, anybody? Hi, yes, no? Okay. Yes, no? Feel free. Don't feel bad.
So for folks who haven't read your wonderful book, I wonder if you might share with the group some examples of some of the ways Black women in particular have spoken up on social media, some of the hashtags that folks have used creatively and the ways in which that's been transformative and around social justice issues.
For sure. One of the first ones I can think of is Black Lives Matter, right? It's probably the biggest hashtag to ever hit Twitter until Me Too came along, right? But Me Too was also created by a Black woman. So I want you to think about that, right? The two biggest hashtags that Twitter has ever seen were created by Black women. And I know that Tarana is not queer, but the women who created Black Lives Matter are. I think that that's super important because for me, when I look at it, I look at one hashtag is focused on the racial aspect of being, of their being, so they're Black, right? Black Lives Matter. And then Me Too is focused on the woman, I mean, it's supposed to be for all, but it primarily focuses on the experiences that women have, right? So it's this navigation that Black women have to make, like this negotiation. You know, we have the race work to do and we have the gender work to do. And I think that those two kind of personify, like, or they exemplify what we have to deal with. Some other ones, I don't know, You OK Sis, I created that one. That one is to combat street harassment and to center the experiences of Black and Latino women because so much of street harassment, anti-street harassment work is led by white women, and it often looks like men of color that are preying on white women. And that's not a cool narrative because what we know is that, and what we've learned through the conversations with UK Sis is that Black and Latino women start experiencing street harassment earlier, and it's more harsh, right? So when you look up all the women that have been killed as a result of street harassment over the last 10 years, they're primarily Black and Latino women. So white women in this country are not getting killed because of street harassment. So why are they the face of it? So UK Sis was big on that. Why I Stayed, which is by Bev Gooden, that was a whole conversation because everybody wants to talk about domestic violence, but like, why don't you just leave? And so her response was Why I Stayed. And so many people were just coming out and talking about all the reasons why they did not leave this domestically abusive relationship. And I thought that was super powerful. And she got so much crap for it, right? And then it was stolen and co-opted by men, which happens all the time. That really bothered me. What else? What other ones? Gosh, there's just so many. Yes, Solidarity is for white women. Mickey Kendall, whose new book, Hood Feminism, is out. You should go get it. That was, I think, probably the first one that I remember really galvanizing folks in this feminist conversation that was about race. Because we'd been talking about feminism, and there's, at least for our generation, this is not to say that there's been no other conversation, but Solidarity is for white women was very much reminding me of like the Combahee River Collective, because for our generation, because it was just this radical idea that you all claim to be feminists, but you only stick up for yourselves, and this is why Black women have to go about doing what it is that we do, because y'all don't care. And that really changed feminist discourse for this modern time. I don't think that Mickey gets enough credit for that. And if you go and look it up and look up some of the conversations that were around it, it's really this idea, and we saw it happen in Me Too, right? We saw this idea that these white women that were claiming to be feminists, when their friends get called out, all of a sudden is, well, he's a nice guy. He's also a rapist. So is the solidarity only for y'all? You know what I mean? That concept, I thought that was super important. Feminist Selfie, I wrote about that one. I thought that was super important because white women tried to steal that too. And the problem that we have with something like Feminist Selfie was this idea that, you know, because white women have some of the white feminists were saying that, you know, it's not feminist to like taking selfies or whatever, that it goes against feminism or what have you. And I was like, what the hell is that? Are you stupid? Like, why can't I take a selfie? But then I realized that the conversations about the threats of Black women's beauty, right? And how historically white women have been threatened by Black women's beauty, which is why they always put it down and tell us to cover up. There used to be laws that we have to cover up parts of our body because they were so threatened by it. So with her coming up, this Black woman saying that it is feminist to have a selfie, there were a lot of white women that lost their minds over that, because how could these Black women actually think that they're beautiful? And that's really what it was about. So, but then a white woman stole it and turned it into something else. And it's like, oh, come on, guys. Y'all don't even take the same selfies. Like, what's going on? So we had a lot of that. So there's been a number of, I'm trying to think of what else. There's one that I don't particularly talk about, but it's not in the book either. There's a reason for that. What we're recording, so I'll tell y'all afterwards. I see you guys, you showed up. So you get the tea after the fact. Yes.
Sorry. Yeah, no. I'm thinking about hashtag Cite Black Women, and if we might talk about the power of a new discourse about how important it is to give Black women credit for their emergent theories, and like to just like the power of being online and being able to track these theories and discourse back to an original person.
Yeah.
How powerful that was.
That is super, super. Does everybody hear her? Everybody? Okay. That is super powerful because I'm somebody who wants to be cited for the things that I come up with. And the reason why it's important because we have been erased for so long, right? So when you think about it from the, I remember hearing this thing, I don't know how true it is, but they said if you ever see a quotation and it says anonymous, it was probably a woman. Has anybody heard that before? Yeah. If you ever had something great happen in your life, and you don't know why it happened, it's probably a Black woman that did it, right? Because that's how it goes, because there's a double erasure there, right? So Black people are erased from history, and women are erased from history. So Black women are like in the gutter, right? And so it's super important to kind of reclaim that, reclaim our intellectual authority and our capacity. And a lot of people don't think that we are even capable of developing theories, but yet they use a lot of the theories that we come up. They use our inventions, they use our ideas. They definitely use our aesthetic and our style of speaking. So, you know, that's also problematic. That's another thing that we see, this aesthetic that a lot of white women are adapting, the light-skinned Black woman aesthetic that a lot of them are doing. You see the Kardashians and all these other ones. But the thing is, they're not trying to be dark-skinned Black women, right? They want to be light-skinned, because light-skinned doesn't mean you have to give full credit to what you're doing, right? Think about that. So you think about that as an example of the ways in which people don't feel they can take from Black women, but don't feel they need to give credit. It's super important to me when I blew everybody's head up where I said allies don't exist. To this day, that is still one of the most controversial things I've ever said, and people still get riled up about it. But I proved it theoretically, and nobody can deny that I'm right. Allies do not exist, not in the ways that people are using it. And I did that 5 years ago, okay? Cite me on that. The idea that hoes don't exist, sluts and hoes do not exist. That messed up the whole slut-shaming concept. So white women, feminist women, have totally rejected that. And I'm just like, but I guess maybe because I'm a wordsmith and I think that words mean things? Nobody knows that theory? Okay, so here's how it goes. When you are fat shaming someone, what are you shaming them for? Being fat. When you are victim shaming, what are you shaming them for? So when you are slut shaming, what are you shaming them for? So you have to call them a slut and acknowledge them as a slut, which means you're accepting that they're wrong in some way, right? So it's not slut shaming. Slut shaming is the wrong term. I'm going to the language here. You are sex shaming. You are woman shaming, because we do not call men sluts, right? So sluts do not exist. A hoe cannot exist. What did people say a hoe? A hoe, she has sex with too many people. Well, what's an acceptable number? What's the baseline for sexuality? Anybody? What is the baseline number of sexual partners a person could have for it to be normal? No. There is no. So as long as you don't have an answer, you can't have a hypo or a hyper. I've deconstructed hypersexuality similarly. If there's no accepted baseline for 7 billion people on this earth of what constitutes normal sexuality, how then do we make comparisons in order to be able to determine that someone is having too much or too little? So then how do we come up with the terms like hoe and slut? Right? These are kinds of things that we work out. I worked that out on a fucking middle of the night sometime. I think I was high as shit too, and it was just like, just tweet, just like, yo, hoes don't exist. And I went to Ebony, I was like, yo, I'm gonna write this down. It's an article called Deconstructing Hoe. Go look it up. And I wrote a thing for Blog Her, which no longer exists. It was really great content. But the idea remains the same. I'm really big on challenging these often arbitrary notions that have floated through the academy for like decades, if not centuries. And then I'm like, this don't make sense. And so maybe it's because I'm a girl from the hood, I'm from the Bronx, I grew up in the hip hop, you know what I mean? Maybe because I grew up poor or whatever, but if it don't make sense to me, I'm not going to perpetuate it. I need it to make sense. And I try to make it accessible, right? Part of the problem with feminism today is that it's not accessible. Or at least, I shouldn't say feminism today, because feminism today, we have worked to make it that. But for a long time, feminism has not been accessible to anyone outside these doors. And that's not right. You know, that's why I wrote a book like Reclaiming My Space. That's why the book is only $14.95. Who can afford to spend $24.95 on a book? There's a reason I didn't have a hardcover. I didn't do a dual release. I wanted the price to be low enough that people could afford it. I wrote it in a language that's accessible so that your 70-year-old church mother and your 18-year-old niece can pick it up and read it. That's important. So I know I moved away from the site thing, but that's kind of how it all works. It's really organic. Any other questions? Feel free to ask. You can ask me whatever you want to ask me. Listen, I wear a size 12 wide in case anybody was caring about my shoes. I didn't wear my boots because the virus.
As we attend a school that is composed of majority white women, I was just wondering if you had ideas of practical ways we can make our feminism more intersectional, because as you said, we can't give up on each other, but at times that is hard.
Yeah. So you're asking how to make feminism more intersectional?
Yeah.
Okay, and you're saying like, because you go to school with a lot of white women. Man, I've been there. I think I was radicalized at the University of Pennsylvania. I ain't never seen money like that in my life. I was like, what is wrong with you? Y'all can afford to eat 3 meals a day? This is amazing. I think in order to be intersectional, you have to see people as human beings, and I think that that's a big struggle for oppressive people. One, acknowledging that you are in an oppressive position, and you don't have to be white to be in an oppressive position. You don't have to be a man to be in an oppressive position. I think that there's a lot of times we don't want to recognize that we have the power to oppress others in some ways, maybe not on a systemic way, but in enough ways that, you know, it impacts somebody's lives. So we have to be able to see humanity in each other. And I think that we are really struggling, particularly in this day and age where y'all type everything and you take pictures of everything. You don't read body language. We were just talking about this earlier. It's like you don't know how to pick up on each other's cues. You don't even necessarily know how to show someone that you're upset. You have the steaming face emoji, but do you know how to convey to someone who's standing right in front of you that what they just said to you hurts, right? Before we get to theoretical practices, we have to connect with each other on that human level. And I think that when I talk about social media and stuff, yeah, I see it as a powerful tool, but I also see it as really harmful for humanity in that regard. So in order for you to be intersectional, you have to see somebody, recognize somebody's humanity. And it's not about being colorblind or sexuality blind or gender blind or anything like that. No, accept and acknowledge people as they say they are. Well, I don't care about race and I don't care about gender. Well, why don't you? Because these are the things that make us unique and diverse. If we didn't care about any of those identifying things, then where's the diversity in what we're trying to do? Where's the intersectional approaches to making life better if we just disregard everything? So I think it's super important to try to learn about other people. And if you say that you are all about intersectionality, you might want to learn a little bit more about what it means to live at these intersections of these oppressions. You might want to read what intersectionality actually means and study that, learn where it came from. Where'd it come from? No teachers, where'd it come from? Oh, okay, good. See, you're all the gender studies dorks. I love it. I love it. I love it. You should know that. You know how many places I go, they don't know it? But they use the word. Don't use words you don't know what they mean. That's just a life hack. Because you look stupid to people like me, right? Yeah, recognizing people's humanity, accepting it, learning more about what makes them individuals. And intersectionality is not just like, oh, you know, I have this and this. It's the intersections of identities that are oppressed. That's really important. And race and gender do matter in that. So learn a little bit more about what it's like for a black woman that's disabled to navigate a predominantly white campus, if you can. And that might give you a little more. I like that they had it wrapped up in the plastic. Socially distancing my water.
Could you explain?
I'm here for it.
Oh. Could you explain what you mentioned before about allies don't exist, please?
I'm sorry, I cannot hear you.
Could you explain more about what you said earlier, allies don't exist?
Allies don't exist. Oh. Well, how much time we got? 7:49. Okay, so the linguistic approach that I take was just very simplistic, and it's really gonna piss you off. It is. We can talk more about it. It's gonna piss you off. So what do allies do, right? Let's think about countries that are allies. What do countries that are allies do? Anybody? We're gonna make this a conversation. Don't make me be Socratic. They support each other, right? How? In a war or, yeah, they exchange things, right? Now, is their exchange like uneven? Is it mutual? Like, what is it? It's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be mutual exchange, right? They each benefit from it in some way, right? Right. How is an oppressor going to have an even exchange with somebody who's oppressed? How do they have a mutual benefit? So the example that I used when I wrote about this theory was there's no mutual benefit for white people to have black liberation happen. Black liberation for me, when it happens, has benefit A. If you are my ally, it should also have benefit A for you, or something comparable. There is no comparable experience that a white person could have to black liberation. You cannot be my ally, because then I'm also expected to reciprocate. Now I owe you shit. So, did that make sense? All right, so what I started using, what they said in the Guardian or CBC or something, there's like co-conspirators or something. They caught me at a rally somewhere. So I had this idea that we have co-conspirators, but I also just say, and this really pisses people off, I say, be a good person. People are like, what do you mean? Be a good person. Because when you're a good person, you treat human beings with dignity and respect. You act with integrity. You want the best for everyone. And that's how you live your life. And a lot of people struggle with being good people, which is what we find out, which is why they slap the label allies on themselves. Because they don't know how to just be good for good's sake. They want the cookies. The people that put ally on their face and go to a pride parade. Nah, dude, stop that. That's corny. It is offensive. I'm an ally, I want to be here. LGBTQIA, the fourth A is ally. No, it's actually not. Yeah, okay, that's the simple version. You can actually look up the thread, unless you're a Bernie bro. It's probably gonna piss you off because it was in the context of Bernie Sanders back when he was running the last failed time. So, your boy can't seem to win. I ain't got no stake in the game, but your boy just can't seem to win. Weekend at Bernie's 7. Any other questions? Any other questions? This is why they hire me, you understand? I give you all the nice stuff in here, and then we get to the real conversation afterwards. Any other questions? Yes, no, any? Okay, no questions at all? Don't be afraid, come on. What's my favorite color? Purple.
How do you give advice on, so moving forward, what can everyone do? Yes, just be a good person, but also how do you address the anger and guilt and fear of
asking questions to people that they're genuinely trying to understand, and you want to be able to help people understand. Where is that type of intersectionality, and how do you propose people go about asking questions in a kind way and responding with compassion?
I don't even think, everybody get her question? Like, how do we have this, how do we move forward with this conversation, right? How do we accept the questions, give the answers, and have the dialogue, yeah? And you mentioned the word kind. I don't even think you need to be kind. I think you just need to respect people, right? I think a lot of times we're trying too hard to be kind rather than just respecting people. I know for me, I don't want you to sugar anything, but I'm also an Aries, so I really want you to shoot the shit straight, like just get to the point. What is the question, you know? But everybody's different. I think that it's important for us to have those like real conversations. And I go back to the point that I made about how we type more than we sit together and we talk, and I get social distancing and all of that, but talk on the phone at least. Like transition from the texting and the social media to just even being on the phone to have some of those conversations. You all have these kinds of meetings. I know you all have student groups and things like that. Somebody's got to bring these conversations up. It's not always talking about how much money you got from the bake sale. It's like, let's talk about this thing that happened, right? There was some incident. We need to talk about this as a group. And we really need to deconstruct that and make this a safe space that anybody who asks any questions is okay. And we're going to honor each other. So honor is something that you're going to hear me talk about a lot. I conduct myself with honor because I want to be able to wake up every day and know that I'm a good example for my son. And I can't do that if I don't live with honor. And I wish that when I was your age, somebody imparted the importance of living with honor and integrity. Because when you do that, you will never fall short of fully respecting someone else's humanity. You will ask questions in a respectful way. You will honor the people's rights to answer honestly. You will receive that honesty with grace. You will extend compassion. All of these are markers of living honorably. And that's how I try to be. Now, I'm very shoot from the hip, so you ask me a question, hey, what can a white person do? I'm going to tell you I don't know because I'm not white. So that's how that conversation's going to go. But you may ask, like my friend Ijeoma, like who wrote about So You Want to Talk About Race, she may actually have that answer for you because she's dope like that. And her book is called So You Want to Talk About Race. Mine is not called that. I tell people I don't want to talk about race anymore. Because what are you talking about? You talk about race and economics, race and education, race and healthcare, race and gender, or race and sexuality. What are we talking about? I don't want to talk about none of it, actually. So find somebody, that's another point, find somebody who actually wants to talk about this stuff before you thrust it onto people. Ask people if they have the capacity to engage in this kind of conversation. Don't assume that just because a black woman is standing there or just because a queer indigenous woman is standing there, that they actually want to be queried about their identity every single day. Sometimes they just want to play Fortnite. Some of y'all do play Fortnite. I know you don't want to admit it. My 13-year-old does, but I know the 18 and 22-year-olds do too. So it's okay. Sometimes you just don't want to be asked about your race all the time. You don't want to have to talk about your queerness. You don't have to wear your rainbow flag every day. You don't want to have to give a Women's History Month presentation. You just want to watch the regular show. I watch the regular show. It's a funny show. The kids shouldn't be watching that show. No way. Any other questions? Oh, here we go. Some hand sanitizer. Dirty.
So you kind of touched on before about the importance of social media, but also how harmful it can be. And that's kind of been a theme. I know Jack Halberstam talked about that last night. And I went to a talk with Dean Spade last week, and he also mentioned how it is causes like exhaustion in young people. So much exhaustion that then they are not able to go out and do the work. So I'm wondering how you balance like those two things, the power and how harmful it can be.
That's a really good point. And I have to preface this by saying that I'll be 41 in April and that I've been an activist since I was 19. None of this stuff existed then. So I think that, like, I always say that, like, I'm the analog girl in the digital world. Like, we're Gen X hybrid generation. So we know what it's like to do this stuff without social media. And social media for us was merely another tool, right? We were trained marching the streets and writing, doing the sit-ins at the president's office and all of that, fun stuff. That's where we cut our teeth. And then as we got older, a lot of us got into community organizing, like on the ground, working at local organizations but then social media came and it's like, wow, we have this new tool. So we were able to adjust to that. And I think that the key is remembering that it is a tool and it is not life. It's not the only tool. It's a tool, not the only tool. However, I think it's very ableist to assume that everybody is able to take it offline. And I try to stress that all the time, that for some people, their tweets are the only thing they have, which is what makes it so powerful, right? So it's giving voice to people who have always had a voice, but nobody was listening before, right? Or nobody was reading what they were saying before. And so for us to be like, oh, well, hashtags aren't everything. I get why some people say that. And there's sometimes I look at some of the things and I'm like, y'all ain't doing nothing. But more not just because I'm like, oh, it's just a hashtag. It's more like, I'm like, where's the power behind it? So you got a hashtag trending. So BuzzFeed's gonna write a little article and just steal a couple of the tweets and somebody's gonna get paid. You're not gonna get paid. So what is the point? I want people to learn how to translate that into forward movement, which is something that I do teach and I do consult on. It's like, we have to go forward from here. You got this hashtag, it's trending, it's got thousands of tweets. How do we turn this into policy? That's where I'm thinking. A lot of folks are short-sighted. They're not thinking about policy change. They're thinking about trending hashtags and having an article written about them. I'm over that because I write the articles, so I'm not shooting for that. I'm shooting for liberation. I'm shooting for change. So what I think is important is that you can, with like You OK Sis, for example, that was never meant to be a movement. I was just telling a story one day about an experience that I had. And organically, it kind of grew out of that. Same thing with the National Moment of Silence. Like, I was not thinking, oh, I'm going to just plan this whole big thing and be famous and change the world. I was kind of looking at it practically, like, why are you guys trying to do a vigil on a Sunday evening in New York City when the trains are slow? To me, I was like, this doesn't make any sense. So I kind of came in and was like, let's do it this way. Because the community organizer, I have a master's degree in organizational leadership and management, kind of clicked in, and it was just like, that doesn't make sense. I know how to do that. A lot of folks are like me. We know how to do that. We know how to stage direct actions. We know how to deal with protocols. We know how to deal with the police. A lot of folks don't know how to do that stuff. A lot of people, they want to abolish prisons, but never been to one. And I'm not saying that it's wrong to want to abolish prisons based on what you've heard, but I do think you need to have more of a connection to that movement. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's, I want to see more action. I want to see more policy action, though. I don't need people to be out there with the placards and stuff like that. There's always going to be people protesting. That's not going to stop. You don't have to be that person. I want to see more movement towards policy. I think that's why so many people are frustrated with the presidential election, because everybody's like, where's the policy? Let's see the policy. Let's see the plans that somebody had. Could have had a bad chick, but she's gone now. Okay, and we're back. I had to do one moment of silence for Elizabeth Warren real quick. You may not like her, but I was riding with Elizabeth Warren. Okay, yeah, you gotta, people get master's degrees in community organizing. Like, this is a thing. And making a Facebook page doesn't make you an organizer. It doesn't make you a protester. But it's a start. And I recommend that those of you that are interested in that kind of community organizing and grassroots organizing connect with mentors that have done this, that can teach you a lot about it. and can guide you through it. I've done that for a lot of people. I've helped a lot of high schoolers take on their principals because nobody was listening to them. I was like, so here's what we're gonna do. All right. And it was funny because I remember the last time I did it with this school, my partner at the time was like, you gonna get them kicked out of school, then what you gonna do? I was like, yo, but that's what needs to happen right now. Like they just need to just fight the power. And then I really was like, no, I don't wanna get them kicked out of school. So I had to like go back and be like, okay, well listen, this could get you kicked out of school. So let's come up with some other ideas. You know, you gotta be responsible. But it's helpful to seek mentorship from people that have done this kind of thing. I like tepid water. I don't like cold water. It hurts my spirit. So when it's tepid, I'll be like, it's the best thing ever. Yes, hi, how are you?
Hi. So I guess in terms of policy changes, are you someone who feels frustrated by incrementalism as an approach to policy changes, or do you see that as a pragmatic method for changing the world?
Pragmatism. Who's heard of the song Mississippi Goddamn by Nina Simone? What is she saying there? That's just the trouble, too slow. Desegregation, too slow. They keep telling us to go slow. They've been telling us that for centuries. Keep telling people that folks are not ready for things. Not ready for a black president, not ready for a woman, not ready for a queer person, not ready, not ready, not ready. Keep telling people, we gotta go slow, we gotta go slow, we gotta go slow. Well, if it ain't happened in my lifetime, or my mama's lifetime, or my grandmother's lifetime, or my great-grandmother's lifetime, how much longer are we supposed to wait, right? Last year, I was talking to somebody, and they were like, yeah, you know, when we finally get same-sex marriage legal here, I was like, it's been legal since 2014. He was like, really? I was like, yeah. He was like, I couldn't tell. And I was like, wow, that says something, right? We got to think about, yes, I mean, okay, law and society, society and law, lawyers in the building teach law and society. We know that, you know, law influences society, society influences law. We know that there's a duality there that is damn near unbreakable, and that we've got to convince society that something is good. That's how we get the laws passed, but then sometimes we have to pass the laws to tell society that something is good, and it's very difficult. However, radicalism is important sometimes. Black Panthers, you know, for all their flaws, got some radical stuff done just by showing up with a gun. A bunch of black dudes showed up with guns, California got gun control. Radical action, radical move, benefits the whole community, right? Sometimes that means harnessing and weaponizing people's fears. So if you fear the takeover of a black man, maybe weaponize that. Fear the queer takeover, maybe weaponize that with bricks that you throw at people when they come and shut your bar down, right? Radical actions sometimes. But incremental progress, I mean, that assumes that the world is going to continue, too. That's the other thing I think that is really pragmatic, is that the assumption that the world is going to continue, and if this epidemic or this pandemic is teaching us anything, we can't rely on that. So we're planning for our children and our grandchildren, which I do think is important, but I don't know, the idealist in me is like, come on, man. Like, no, we need this now. I don't know. Did anybody pay attention to Dr. King towards the end of his life and his speeches and his talks, how urgent he sounded? And one of them was about urgency, right? This is the man who said, you know, I may not get there with you. That switched up and became very urgent. And anybody started to notice how, like, different his actions were? He started trying to do everything at once. He knew he was gonna die, right? When Malcolm X was killed, Dr. King knew he was gonna die. And there's an urgency from when Malcolm X died. You start seeing it and hearing it in Dr. King's work. he wants to take on housing and labor and all these other things that he really wasn't doing before. He was more of an orator and a motivator for the folks that were doing, the race work. But when they took out X, then he really was just like, no, I gotta do this now, because if not now, then when? We still haven't gotten it. It's 2020. I struggle because I want to know what parts of his dream we've achieved. So, and I'll leave that as an open question. If anybody has any ideas of which parts of Dr. King's dreams we've achieved, please, share them. Like I said, I struggled. I could totally be missing it. But if you have any ideas about that, discuss. But if not, all right. Thank you for that question. That's a great question. This water is so good. Like, it's tepid. It's great. This is that Oregon water, so I'm from the East Coast. We don't have, we don't have good water. My water looks like somebody poured white out in it. I'm so serious. If you follow me on social media, I poured, you saw my video not too long ago. I was like, good morning to Philly water. It was like white. It's like somebody put some Alka-Seltzer in there. Or some cocaine or something. I don't know.
Do we have any more questions?
Hi, I'm just wondering what you've been reading lately, what you've been reading lately, or just any books.
Oh,
you want to talk about?
Yes. So I'm reading this book called Kintu, and I'm reading. I just finished up My Sister. This is a Serial Killer, or My Sister the Serial Killer. I'm doing the Free Black Woman's Free Black Woman Library Reading Challenge, and they have this whole list of books that you want to read, books with these things, right? And you kind of check them off. And so Kintu, it marks off book by African author, book with a name in the title, book with one word in the title, award-winning book or whatever. And it's a really interesting it's a story about a family that's cursed through generations and trying to figure out how they can overcome that curse. And it's really good. It's got great mythology. My sister is the serial killer. I don't want to spoil it, but it's really funny and really good. Another African author. Her sister keeps killing men. It's so awesome that she does, but her sister's tired of cleaning up the blood. So she's like, what's going on now? We have to figure out why you keep killing these guys. So it's kind of cool to see these young black women kind of being like, why are you killing the guys? I don't know. They keep coming over. It's a really funny book. You should read that. Hood Feminism, I'm going to start next by Mickey Kendall. They sent me a copy. I support. I tell people all the time, there's a lot of people that talk about books and deals and things like that. And so I was like, I want to see everybody. I want to see a whole row of black feminist books. I want everybody's books, all my friends, all my peers. I want all of our books to be on the same shelves. So I'm very happy that Hood Feminism is out. What else did I just read? Stop Telling Women to Smile. Gotta get that. Tatiana Fazlalizadeh, who created the that's the other one, Stop Telling Women to Smile. That movement is incredible. But she finally came out with a book. And in the book, she talks to different women about their experiences and kind of chronicles them a bit, gives us some demographics. She has their portraits and what have you, and they talk about street harassment and stuff. Stop Telling Women to Smile, get that one, that's a good one. Yeah. I'm always reading because, what? My dad, are you good on food and water? He's 70. He said, the water is delicious. I'm gonna send him a picture of this. What was I about to say? I was about to say something until my dad texted me, I'm sorry. I was gonna say something fun. I'm good, bro. Okay.
Also, just so everyone knows, we have Hood Feminism for sale right outside the council chamber, as well as Feminista Jones's books and other relevant authors.
Oh, my book, yes, Reclaiming Our Space. I wrote a poetry book called The Secret of Sugar Water, and I've been pushing that lately because the title poem, The Secret of Sugar Water, it actually talks about what I think is happening right now, and that has been happening for the last few years, this idea that people who have experienced privilege for most of their lives are starting to realize what it's like to have their livelihoods and their lives threatened, and they are turning to the people who have had to deal with oppression for their whole lives, looking for what I call the secret of sugar water. For those who grew up poor, you know what sugar water is. You know how to make sugar water. The poem talks about somebody coming and asking for the recipe for sugar water, and they give them. And they're like, my sugar water doesn't taste the same. It's like, it's a whole cool thing. But anyway, this idea that when it comes down to people needing to survive and struggling, the people who are going to do the best are the ones who have always had to do it. So someone like me who's been homeless and has gone hungry and has had their utilities cut off and all those kinds of things, I might be better prepared for a pandemic than somebody who's never missed a meal. That's all I'll say. Secret of Sugar Water, you can buy that one, Feminista Jones. Oh, look at that. That's cool. I'll sign it. I really appreciate you all for being here again, because there is a worldwide pandemic, and you all came out to see me, and I really, really, really appreciate that. A number of places that I'm supposed to go to have been canceled, so it's really, I love doing this. So, you know, I actually love coming and talk. This is my activism, because I can't do what I used to do when I was 19 or when I was 25 or when I was 37, because you know when you walk and sometimes you land on your ankle wrong and you don't know why, it's because you old. So like, you just be walking and you're like, go to WebMD, they're like, you're aging. So this is what I do, and this is what I try to do to help keep the fight going. So thank you all so much for coming out. I really appreciate it. And if I could get some hand sanitizer, because I keep touching my nose. And please, if I don't shake you or hug, please understand why, okay? Like, please understand global epidemic.
So thank you all for coming to our concluding symposium event. Unfortunately, we will not be continuing tomorrow, but seriously, thanks for all showing up, and couldn't do it without y'all being here.